continue what you're doing, because this is what it's all about. If you don't want to be in government and come out and talk, then you shouldn't be in government. But you ought to have somebody from the board. You should invite, there's a state division of elections. Our lieutenant governor, the secretary, is also the Secretary of State, and the division of elections is under her control. So there's another guest you can get. You're talking about legislation and things of that nature. If you recall last week, she just signed a bill in Governor Christie's absence to change our primary date for next year, which was in February into June, as a cost-saving measure. I'll go in a little to cost on elections too, and trying to stop having an election every month. I get off board here. Let's see, process, tabulate results. And finally, the voting machines themselves that you have in the polls, the programming that is done for those is done by the Board of Elections. We supply them the ballot and how it should be programmed, but they actually do it. The thought in Board of Elections in New Jersey is that you have the two major political parties, which, you know, we can argue all night whether that's good or bad, but that's what we have. So they're represented equally by both parties. So supposedly the fraud factor does not come into play, that you have one party counting the votes, you have one party programming machines, you have an equal, both parties have their hands in creating the data for the election, if you will. Okay, that's basically, those are the two election entities in every county. Let me try and talk a little more specifically about the county clerk's role. Let's go back to this mail-in ballot application, which used to be the absentee ballot. So it's basically has changed into, you don't need any reason to apply for one of these. There's no checkoff box to say, I'm in the hospital, I'm in college, I'm at work in New York City, and I can't get to the polls. So you can get these in most municipal buildings. I have them online on our website. And it basically asks you to designate what election do you want to participate in. You give your first name, last name, middle initial, your address where you claim you were registered to vote. If you're going to Florida, we have a lot of senior citizens in Ocean County, one of the heaviest senior populations, and a lot of them leave about this time of year and they don't come back until April, but they want to vote in the November election. So they fill these out, they give us the address they're going to be in Florida, the ballot is mailed to them in Florida. This is the most critical factor from our standpoint of trying to avoid fraud. They need to sign the application the way they signed it the day they filled out the voter registration application. I'll tell you a thing we see all the time in the office. Joe Smith's son, Joe Smith Jr., is at the University of California. They want Joe Smith Jr. to vote. And Joe Smith Sr. signs his name. Because what happens is, the staff that work in my office, they get this application. And the first thing they do is they go on the statewide computer voter registration system and they see if this gentleman is indeed registered, the address matches, and then they look at the scanned signature, which comes from, hopefully in the best of worlds, the last election, so we can compare signatures. And you can see right away if the signature is fraudulent, phony, however you want to label it. And that's just one example of where we are able to catch something. Okay, some could claim, as long as he's registered and you know the father did it. Well, legally, I took an oath, and if we're to do this right, we got to make sure it is the actual voter signature. So we have a letter that goes back. We also do a phone call to the voter, because we do, if everything is legit, the other thing I want to do is I want to make sure everybody has legal opportunity to vote. I may not agree with how someone we're going to vote, but I cannot be that way. So anyway, that's a common way. of an early detection, and that person is not, until we see their actual signature and it does match, we will not let them to vote. If they're, I gave you the instance where they're registered to vote somewhere in North Jersey and they're trying to vote down here, and we point out to them they're not allowed to vote here unless they want to change their voter registration and, you know, use the one here. You're only allowed to vote once. If everything is good, the ballot is then mailed to the person. We do not get the ballots back in our office. They go back to the Board of Elections. It's back to that Republican-Democrat thing of both eyes on the thing. And they're not opened and they're not counted until election eve. The number of these people voting this way, rather than going to the polls, is increasing every year. Next year, in the last presidential election, I believe we did about 22,000 vote by mail ballots. We're probably going to do 40,000 next year. So a lot of people are voting this way rather than going to the polls.
It's perfect for fraud.
Let's talk about it a little. Go ahead. I want.
What's so complicated about going and registering? Show your ID, sign it, and you have your vote. I've been doing it for years. Yes, you have the disabled. They need to have an exception. My son was in college. What's so big about it? He needed to put an absentee ballot in Boston. Big deal. But this is becoming commonplace, and that's the problem. You lend itself to fraud by having more of that. It's not that complicated, and we need to stop this nonsense with these absentee ballots. It's unbelievable.
I'm showing you, I'm not arguing either way, but I am saying it is a trend, and that's it's headed that way.
Go there in person, sign their name, show their ID. I can show my ID. What's the problem? Not complicated.
Can I answer, Neil?
Yes.
I'm on your side, but I travel for work, and it's at the drop of a hat. They send me to Tennessee, and I can't vote because I'm in Tennessee. So
that's fine, but you can prove yourself. There's people that lend themselves to fraud by this.
But I follow what you're saying, and I'm trying to tell you from my perspective of this comes to my office, and I'm trying to get more detailed on your fraud thing. If I can definitely see you are in the system as a registered voter, okay, and the signature appears to be, you know, almost an exact replica of the one that we have on the system. If it were this young lady here that I'm talking about, your feeling is she should be rejected and told you can't vote that. I'm just trying to get to a specific example, or what would be the fraud if it were her, you know.
You're not going to do that in the cities.
The more gray area you have, the more fraud there's going to be. We need to make it simple. You vote, you show your ID, you sign the book, and that's it. It's not that complicated. We're making it far too complicated.
Following the thing, but in any event, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
The saddest part of all of this, with absentee ballots, election after election after election, we hear about the militaries.
Right. There you go. How about the military?
Let me talk to you a little about it, and it gives me, again, remember I was saying when I deal with the higher-ups in government, I want to bang my head against the wall. A couple of years ago, we had, because we have a lot of good military men and women that live in Ocean County, and they've been in Afghanistan or Iraq. And so we get the application in, and we're like, okay, how in the hell are we ever possibly going to get this poor guy who's there for the reason why we're sitting here loving it? We can just go to the polls, and he's given his life for us to do that. But yet, how can we physically possibly figure out a way that we can get all this paperwork and the ballot there and then back? Because what was happening before is the poor guy would make his great effort. He'd fill this out. He'd send it back to New Jersey. We'd get it. We'd put a paper ballot in the mail. We'd mail it back and blah, blah, blah. The ballot gets back to New Jersey a week, 2 weeks, whatever, after the deadline to vote.
They didn't even say that.
Let me wait a minute. You're not letting me finish the story. So, yeah, Catherine, I'm going, what the heck is going on? Here's this man or woman giving up their life for us to have this great freedom to do it, and we're going to deny him, but yet they may be letting every Tom, Dick, and Harry vote who isn't. So he said, guess what? We're in the computer age here. Why can't we? And we found out that a lot of these troops over there, they have their little laptop computers, they have PCs, all that good stuff. We changed the law, and it was because of Ocean County for our troops abroad in Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever, that we now, and it's a commonplace, we email the ballot, we send it the old way too, to duplicate efforts in case anybody, but it comes back to us, it's given to the board, it counts, he makes the deadline, the original comes back as well. But before, they were basically, their vote was lost because it didn't have that postmark, and we're like, so that was like one small victory in the city of a lot of things, but it was really, and think of in a presidential year, I know, I hate to talk like that because to me every election's important, that's what our country's about, but I know the focus, and just this year, in case you don't know, when the state legislature, who makes a lot of the laws we've got to live with, it's the lowest turnout of the 4 cycle, and it's shame on us. Everybody should get out because we could make a difference. I heard, I think, Joellen say about how it's controlled by one party, Senate and Assembly, and man, that's gridlock of, we won't get a lot of things done.
Because the Republicans
Speak up, Don.
are wusses. They're wusses. They do not. We're making it easier and easier for frauds to be occurring when we have more and more chances for absentee ballots. People are voting months in some places ahead of the election, which is stupid because so much can happen between that time. So we're making it easier for fraud. I'm not saying you are.
I'm not.
But the Republicans all over.
I'll give you just another, and then is in Florida. Do you know? I'm going back to the last election, and I read this. I assume it's true. I'm like a lot of. I believe what I agree with, and I don't know. McCain and Obama. Obama won the state of Florida, but guess what? McCain won it on election day at the polls. Obama won it through the absentee ballots. I'm sorry.
I have one suggestion. Neil, I agree with Neil about the fraud. And actually, if you
Speak up.
If you wish to participate, you should make everything that you're going to get to the vote. I understand there's certain circumstances. However, why can't we, to make sure that those ballots, those mail-in ballots are truly of that individual,